Farmer from the Low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. We've got a superb podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Greg Waddell. He does absolutely amazing work over at Sleepers Media. We're going to be taking a look at what he's noticed in the Big Ten thus far this season. Certainly Purdue is the number one team, but how do we evaluate everyone outside of them? We're going to be diving in on the big Friday game between Wisconsin and Michigan State, what that means for both of those teams, and a little bit of a landscape view of what we're all seeing in college basketball. He's also going to point out a game or two that he's looking at for this Friday, as well as it is a very small Friday card, but we do have some nice opportunities on it, and we're going to be taking a look at all those in the final segment when I get you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, and do have to throw in there the disclaimer that do have to record this a little bit ahead of time because the Greg Peterson experience, that is from midnight to 3 Eastern time, that would be 9 to midnight Pacific, so got a few games to clean up from the Wednesday card and have to take a look at the early games for Thursday. Unfortunately, not going to clean up the late Thursday games on the podcast for Friday because we do have like a trillion games on the card that I do apologize about, and we got to get you guys picks and analysis on all those games tomorrow. But let's take a look at what we saw late Wednesday into Thursday, try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Well, first things first, we do have to celebrate the fact that the DK Network write-up pick for Wednesday did hit. Right now, the Thursday pick is not looking too bad. As I record this, we've got San Francisco plus 10, and they're up 28-26 with about 90 seconds remaining in the first half. So we're in good shape. Hopefully we can keep these good vibes going, but that said, it was a very nice, easy winner for the one on Wednesday, with Washington deciding to play absolutely no defense whatsoever. It was a glorious display as Colorado gets the win, gets the cover, 98-81. And for Colorado, they shoot 55% from the floor, going 26 of 28 at the free throw line. And for Washington, they lose a rebound battle 38-22. They got completely blown away in this one. And for Colorado, every single one of their starters in double figures, including Eddie Lampkin, a double-double, 14 points, 10 rebounds. So that was pretty superb. What else has been pretty superb is making money off of New Mexico. They were able to get a very nice winning cover on the road against San Jose State, aka San Jose State, by kind of 95-75. New Mexico now 14-5 against the spread. Jalen Ellis was able to supply the team with 18 points. New Mexico goes 10 of 19 from three-point range. San Jose State does go 10 of 27 from distance, but they lose the battle on the glass. They lose the turnover battle as well, 18-6, as every single one of your New Mexico starters were able to reach double figures. So nice, good win there. It's an Illinois team that all of a sudden, by the way, out there in the Big Ten, they're playing a bunch of overs. We're going to take a little bit of a look at that game that we did see on Wednesday with Greg between Northwestern and Illinois as well, but in overtime, Illinois fell by kind of 96-91. If you, like me, had the under in this game, it wasn't looking too bad in the first half, and then the second half, everything went completely harebrained, and for Illinois, they lose this game despite going 11-24 from 3 because Northwestern shot 11 of 18 from distance. Illinois wins the rebound battle 46-32, but they lose the turnover battle 10-5. Boo Booey, 29 points, 7 assists. Illinois, by the way, to the over. 12 overs and 7 unders, and right now in the Big Ten, you've only got 2 teams that have played more than one more under than over, so that means that if your boilerplate number is like Minnesota, 9 overs and 10 unders, there's only 2 teams that have played more than one game below, 500 to the under. There's been a lot of overs in this conference as far this season, so that has been interesting to take a look at. What else has been interesting to take a look at is another money-making team out there in the Mountain West, as we did see Colorado State go on the road and get pasted by Nevada, who's now 12-7 against the spread. 77-64 the final. Colorado State did not have it from three-point range. 6 of 23 from distance, as you did get a 3 of 6 3-point shooting performance of Jalen Lake. That means everyone else went 3 of 17 from the outside. Isaiah Stevens, 8 points, 10 assists, but wasn't really able to get going from the floor, going 4 of 16, and Jared Lucas did. He was 10 of 14 with 28 points for Nevada. They only turned the ball over 9 times. They win the rebound battle. A nice, good win there, one that they badly needed, and right now, Arkansas is just in need of wins. They get completely lambasted by Ole Miss, 77-51. Arkansas now 5-14 against the spread. This has just been really sad to take a look at. For Ole Miss, Jalen Murray was able to chip in their 21 points. Arkansas goes 5 of 22 from three-point range. They lose the turnover battle 14-9. They lose the rebound battle. At this point, Arkansas, it looks like they are just not going to get right this season. And hey, DePaul, they got to cover against Marquette. They don't get the win, but you know what? As 18.5-point underdogs, they lose by a count of 86-73. So yay, verily for DePaul, as Tyler Kolek in that game was able to supply the team with 22 points. And then taking a look at what we got for Thursday, like I said, a lot of games in the balance, but we do know that we got an over in Florida International versus Western Kentucky. Final minute of this game, currently 101-89, and I do expect a little bit more of this moving forward. It's a Western Kentucky team that's actually guarded the arc really well, but they do play at warp speed, and Florida International has been a little bit of an all-over-the-place team themselves. This was a spread of Western Kentucky laying 6.5 points. They should be able to get there, and St. Thomas just continues to make you some money doing this in the closing 90 seconds of this game, but they are currently up by 13 points. Spread on this game was 6.5, so unless we're seeing this with Scott Van Pelt's bad beats, we are going to be seeing St. Thomas go to 12-6 against the spread. The Tommies, they were in a very much dip and tuck game towards the middle part of the second half, but then they were able to take hold. As for North Dakota State, as I'm doing this, they went 7-14 from three-point range, but lost the turnover battle by 8. And for St. Thomas, how about Parker Jorklin? 30 big points out of him. This has been a St. Thomas team that has been fun to watch all season long, and what else has been interesting to watch? It's been Nebraska-Omaha being able to cover numbers, but they're unable to do so against Oral Roberts, doing this in the closing seconds. Oral Roberts has about a 4-point favorite right now, up by 10, so that should drop Nebraska-Omaha to 11-7 against the spread, but they've actually been able to make you a little bit of money out there. Currently, as I do this, Arizona State is up at the half against Oregon as well, 33-28. Arizona State has been rhymeless, reasonless with regards to their offense, but they actually entered in this game tied for first in the Pac-12, and they've been able to cover some spreads recently. Overall for the season, just 8-10, and Oregon entered into this game 11-7 against the spread, but yeah, N'Faly Dante pick up 4 turnovers in the first half of this game. Note, I said turnovers, not fouls, but for Oregon, just a really lackluster effort out there in the first half. They actually lost the battle on the glass, so that's going to be interesting to take a look at moving forward. What else is going to be interesting to take a look at is the Coastal Conference, as you had a big one between Towson and Drexel, and Towson able to get the job done. This by a count of 70-67, and I mean, Drexel has really cranked up their tempo. This has been a Towson team that has been a little bit all over the place. They were shaky to begin the season, but now they've really been able to find their form ever since Nenda Tark was able to get in the fold, a 2-time transfer that in this game, he was the team's top scorer. He was able to supply the team with 18 points. Both of these teams, by the way, in the top 25 nationally with regards to rebound rate. Drexel actually wins the turnover battle by a count of 9-5, but they lose that rebound battle 42-37. As for Towson, they go just 14 of 24 at the free throw line, but they were able to do a solid job being able to set up some second chances, winning the offensive rebound battle by a count of 13-11, so they're able to persevere and they're able to get it done. Vermont is trying to show that they are still the class of the AEC. It looked like UMass Lowell was going to be able to steal this game late, as Vermont, they were up 7 points with 2.5 minutes remaining. Then you have UMass Lowell take this game to overtime, but then in overtime, Vermont able to take hold. They take the lead in the final seconds, and they win 72-65 despite shooting just 8 of 30 from three-point range. Vermont, just time and time again, they're so hard to beat in this conference. UMass Lowell loses the turnover battle by a count of 16-12 as well, and they do now have Abdul Kareem Koulibaly back in the fold. He started this game, but he was only able to make it 9 minutes, so that's of concern for UMass Lowell as well. So a very quality win out there for the old Vermont Catamounts. It's a Monmouth team that as well, if you're looking at the CAA, they've been a relatively good cover team all season long, unable to get the job job done on Thursday, though, as they fall. They're unable to cover in this one by a count of 72-65 against Stony Brook. It has been a Stony Brook team that has been one of your better cover 8 teams as well. They're now 12-6-1 against the spread, and for Stony Brook, 10 of 22 from three-point range for them. You had Andre 3000 Snotty be able to give the team 10 rebounds, as for Stony Brook, they actually lose the battle on the glass 41-32, but for Monmouth, just 7 of 22 from three-point range. So Stony Brook, they're able to make a little bit of a statement. They're able to get it done, and right now one of your bigger fades is Elon. The early game of the day does not go their way, 78-68. The old Fighting Camels are able to get the job done, as Anthony Doloroso was able to give you 29 points, 9 rebounds for Elon. They do end up losing the rebound battle by a count of 37-33, so that was a little bit less than savory. And we did see Charleston put up a big number. They've been a bit of a disappointment this year, but 107-86, they are able to take it to Hampton. So that was a relatively interesting result that we did see from Thursday as well. And if you've been taking a look at the Atlantic Sun, there have been some great betting opportunities out there. There have been quite a few fades, and right now it has not been going the way of Bellarmine. 5-13 against the spread, and I thought that this was actually a good spot for them, but North Florida now 12-6-1 against the spread as they go on the road and they take down Bellarmine by a count of 71-63. For Bellarmine, they go just 4 of 18 from three-point range. North Florida, they lose the turnover battle by a count of 11-8. They lose the rebound battle, but how about 33 big points out of Chaz Lanier? He was able to get it going, and that was a big win for North Florida, as really your best cover 8 team in this conference is actually Lipscomb, and they got it done once again against a Florida Gulf Coast team that has been all over the place. They were able to knock off Florida Atlantic a few weeks ago, and currently they're 2-4 in the conference. 98-72, Lipscomb gets it done, going 15-29 from 3, 14-5 against the spread for them, 11 of 11 at the free throw line for Lipscomb. They've done this all without Jacob Anjesevic, your top scorer from a season ago. He is yet to play, but you know who did play? That was the one Darren Boyd, who was able to chip in their 38 big points. So Lipscomb has been able to make you some nice coin all season long. What else has been making you some coin is fading the heck out of old IUPUI. They were unable to get it done once again on Thursday, 78-50. They just get completely lambasted. They're now 5-14 against the spread. They don't deserve any more mention than that. But how about Detroit, still winless, and they don't cover again. 5-15 against the spread. UW Milwaukee closes as about a 11.5 to a 12-point favorite. Money came in on Detroit. Why, I have no idea. And UW Milwaukee just separates at the back half of this game, 87-71. BJ Freeman, he was able to give the team 22 points, 11 rebounds. For Detroit, Jaden Stone, top scorer, goes 0 of 4 from three-point range, and despite the fact that they had a just inferno mode 7 of 13 from Emmanuel Kusach, they just get completely destroyed once again. I mean, it's a Detroit team that's 0-21, so they have now hit blackjack, ladies and gentlemen, and another team that's been able to hit it big for you. How about UW Green Bay? They get the job done on the money line as underdogs against Oakland, 69-59. This has been one of the best cover 8 teams in all of college basketball, and this was with Noah Reynolds having a pedestrian night, 8.6 assists, but the man that stopped up, Foster Wonders, the Southern Illinois transfer, 19 points, and UW Green Bay has really heated up from 3, 12 of 31 for distance out of them. So this has been a very fun team to take a look at. What has always been fun the last few seasons is take a look at Merrimack Unders, and they played another one, 60-44. They are able to take it to Wagner. That was a very nice, easy cover out of them. And then UTEP versus Louisiana Tech is another game that stood out to me. Louisiana Tech, they get the win, they get the cover by a count of 68-54, as this has been a UTEP team that certainly has been able to do a tremendous job with their defense all season long. Offense leaving quite a bit of something to be desired, and when it comes to this UTEP team, it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to continue to just generate these turnovers, as they've been one of the best teams in all of college basketball with that regard, and one of your best under teams in all of college basketball entering the night was Western Illinois. As of right now, their game is hanging in the balance, so we are unsure if they were able to get another under on the books, but as I am currently recording this, they're up at the half, 37-35 against Southern Indiana. This was a closing total of about 131.5, so looks like they're probably going to go to 4 overs and 12 unders, unless if we see some massive coolage in the second half. But Eastern Illinois, they have been a good under team, 9 unders, 4 overs, and 2 pushes. Looks like they're going to be suffering another over as well. Currently 107 points on the board with about 8.5 minutes remaining, total of 131.5 on the close between they and Tennessee Tech. So looks like the OVC is going to be hitting some overs on this Thursday as well, but that has been something that has been very hot all season long. And then one of the better over teams in all of college basketball has actually been one that I mentioned before, San Jose State. They're now 14 overs and 4 overs thus far this season, but another two teams that have been hitting the over. They're both out there in the Summit League. They were both in action on Thursday, as you're seeing Denver versus South Dakota just completely explode right now. And I should correct that. Northern Colorado is actually out there in the Big Sky. We'll get to them in a second. But Denver and South Dakota currently 48-45 with 18 minutes remaining in the second half. Closing total of 160.5. Denver thus far this season, with the result from Thursday pending, 12 overs to 4 unders. They have been a big giant money maker there. And then when it comes to Northern Colorado, their game is just getting started against Eastern Washington. They had 69 points up at the half. This was a closing total more around a 162.5. So you're going to need a little bit of an explosion in the second half, but they certainly have been a team that has been hitting it big with regards to overs. Abilene Christian has also been quite the over team, but looks like this game might be trending under between they and Utah Tech. 103 points on the board, total of 149.5 at the close. They entered into the night with 11 overs, 5 unders, and a push. Currently, they're just all over Utah Tech in that one as well. And then you did see Grand Canyon in a nip-and-tuck game get a win over Stephen F. Austin by a count of 53-51. Grand Canyon closes as a very small 1.5 point favorite, so they were able to get you a cover there. They are now 18-2 straight up, and the team has been pretty okay against the spread. They're about 9-9 now. ATS says your real money-making team has actually been Southern Utah. They went on the road. They won outright against Tarleton State by a count of 73-70. They were a 5.5 point underdog in this one. Now 12-4 against the spread for them. UT Arlington, they are currently 12-5 against the spread, by the way. We shall see how things go for them, as they were not in action on Thursday. We won't be seeing them again until Saturday, but lots of intrigue currently happening in college basketball. And if you're looking trend-wise at what we are getting in this great sport, well, there's been a whole lot of overs recently, as overall for the season, the over rate is now at 51.6%. 1,646 overs, 1,545 unders. So overs, as I do this with some results pending for Thursday, 101 more of them than unders. Home underdogs, they've had a rough year thus far. 406, 427, and 15 against the spread. And favorites overall are hitting at 51.2%. Meanwhile, if you take a look at the last 7 days in college basketball, things are starting to tame down a little bit. 156 overs to 150 unders, but home underdogs, 42-66 at 2 against the spread. I can't remember a worse 2-week run in conference play for home underdogs ever. I mean, they are just getting absolutely destroyed. Favorites are currently hitting overall at a clip of 56.7% over the last 7 days, 169, 129, and 10. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Thursday. Now let's take a look at the Big Ten landscape and a few games for Friday with our good friend Greg Waddell of Sleepers Media and the Field of 68 next right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peters, and now a part of the Beeson Family Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man as Greg Waddell. He does absolutely tremendous work over at Sleepers Media. Coupled with that, he does an incredible job over at the Field of 68. Taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he is very much looking at the Big Ten, much like myself. He's a man out there in the great state of Michigan, so I'm sure he'll be rooting hard for those Lions this weekend, as you're able to follow him on Twitter/X over at GWizzy, the number 12, all together. And Greg, it's always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Greg. And don't think for 1 second I will not fly to Las Vegas and eat your kneecaps this weekend, my friend. Detroit, all the way. This is the closest I've ever been to the peak of happiness. I know I'm going to be crushed at some point, but I don't care. I'm not going to show it.
Well, hopefully you don't bite my kneecap. Get the ones of the 49ers first. Mine are a little bit bony, so you know what? You're not going to be getting as much good nutrition there. And I do think that when it comes to being able to eat their Wheaties, some of the guys in the Big Ten, they certainly have been able to do that, as it's been a really interesting conference thus far this season. We've been seeing harebrained games like the Illinois versus Northwestern game that we saw a few nights ago. That was one of the craziest of them all. I feel like there's one thing that is really not up for debate. Purdue, very clearly the number one team in the conference, but What do you make out of everyone not named Purdue? Because I do think the Wisconsin versus Michigan State game, we're going to talk about it in a few minutes, is going to be a big one for the conference. But really outside of, I would say, perhaps those three teams, it's just a hodgepodge between everyone else.
Yeah, I've tried to tear it up as best as I could multiple times mentally. Where I'm
tough.
at right now, you've got Purdue alone at the top because they're that good. I think they're the best team in the country. And then you've got contenders, which until yesterday included Illinois. But for now, I'm going to lump them in still. It's Illinois and Wisconsin, teams that I think are right there, should beat most other teams in the conference any given night. Then you've got Michigan State alone as like, are they good? Are they not? We don't know, but we know they're going to make the tournament. Then you've got plucky underdogs in Northwestern and Nebraska that honestly look like they're building NCAA tournament resumes right now. And outside of that, you got a ton of crap that some nights are good, some nights are bad, more nights than often are bad, and we don't really know who's going to show up when.
Yeah, I mean, it has been really random to take a look at a lot of these mid-tier teams in the Big Ten, teams like Rutgers, teams like Nebraska. It's really hard to make heads or tails out of them. And when it comes to just the overall landscape of the conference, how do you take a look at a team like a Maryland where I actually think that they've got some good attributes? They get a nice win on Wednesday on the road against Iowa. And if they could put together any sort of offense whatsoever, this team could be dangerous. And I feel like Maryland is a good microcosm of this conference in that there's a lot of teams that they do a few things well, and then they do the rest just absolutely atrociously, and there's just no rhyme or reason as to what you're going to get night in, night out.
Yeah, after that top six that I mentioned, there's another group that I was a little afraid to say, but it's the group of teams that, based on how bad the rest of the conference is, should definitely make the NCAA tournament, but aren't going to because their coaches have done a really horrible job in the last 12 months. There's four teams that belong in that tier. It's Maryland, it's Ohio State, it's Iowa. And if you really wanted to go there, you could say Indiana. For me, Kevin Willard just failed this team from a roster building perspective. Now, it doesn't sound dramatic or drastic to lose Hakeem Hart, and you don't think you're going to go from a team that was, in a very competitive game with Alabama in the round of 32 last year to completely missing the NCAA tournament. But that's kind of what they're headed for because none of the additions he brought in, which is mostly his freshman class, can shoot the basketball at all. Deshaun Harris-Smith has been not even abysmal. He's been worse than that. I mean, he's terrified. He's terrified to play offense at the Division I level. And Jamie Kaiser's had his moments here and there, but they really needed him to be more ready. He's only shooting 21% from three. So it leaves everybody standing around looking at Jameer Young. And it doesn't really matter how good that front court or Jameer Young is when there's two other guys on the court who are absolute liabilities that don't provide any spacing for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's been just a Maryland team that they've got the potential. If they could just put together any sort of offense, you know what, there would be some upside there. But we shall see if they're going to be able to piggyback off of that win against Iowa, team that right now they're looking quite rough as well. As joining me on the show, we do have Greg Waddell. He does absolutely tremendous work over at Sleepers Media in the field of 68, coupled with the Action Network, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Greg, we do have to take a look at the big game that we're going to be seeing on Friday. It's a very small Friday slate, by the way, only 8 games in total, but it's Wisconsin versus Michigan State. And I know you're on the betting side, much like myself right now. Most books, as we're recording this, Wisconsin between about a 2 to a 2.5 point favorite. How do you look at this matchup? One in which I know that Michigan State certainly going to be looking for revenge at Wisconsin. In my opinion, if they can get this win, they really cement themselves as that number 2 team in the conference.
Yeah, I think you're right. I did the preview over on the Sleepers channel with Carter this morning, and as we were talking through it, he was taking the Michigan State fan approach, as he should, of how important this game is. Is it going to solidify their NCAA tournament hopes? Can it get them back in the mix in the top 4 teams in the conference, a resume win, all of that? And then we got to the end of it, and I was like, this game's actually probably more important for Wisconsin. They have positioned themselves where they can win a Big Ten championship. It's right there for the taking. And that sounds crazy in a year where Purdue eviscerated everyone in the country in the non-conference and looks like the best team in the sport. But Wisconsin's right there. They've been phenomenal in the Big Ten this season. They got the better of Michigan State at the Breslin Center. I thought it was Michigan State's worst performance of the year. I thought Wisconsin forced it. I don't think it was a Michigan State no-show. I think they played right into what Wisconsin wanted them to do in that game, and nobody outside of Tyson Walker and A.J. Hoggard had more than 5 points. And that's something that Wisconsin can do to you. Like they limit possessions, and they're stingy defensively, and they've got size at the front court positions. I think it's going to be very difficult for Michigan State to go into the Kohl Center and expect much of a different result than what we saw game one between these two teams. But then again, it's Tom Izzo, and anytime I doubt Tom Izzo, that's usually a good time to believe in Tom Izzo.
Oh, it certainly is, and it's just a Michigan State team that every single time we count them out, they bring themselves right back. We saw them earlier in the season have their struggles from three. They've been able to clean that up quite a bit. And just what have you made out of this entire Michigan State team? Because I think that out of all the things that I take a look at in this game, the biggest key for them is being able to play even halfway decent on the glass, because the first time around, Tyler Walsh, Stephen Krull, they had their way. And for Michigan State, guys like Mandy Sissoko and company, I feel like are the biggest liabilities on the team, because I feel the backcourt has been fine. They just haven't gotten a lot out of the front court this year.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we say it all the time. You can't expect guys to be something they're not. It's hard to talk about Michigan State's limitations without wanting more from guys who aren't capable of it. And I know that sounds harsh, but Marist Sissoko's a senior. He is who he is. Carson Cooper's still sort of developing, and I think he's gotten better in certain ways. But this was a guy who was at IMG Academy on their B team. He was never supposed to be a rotation player at this level, and give him credit for working where he has. But Tom's stubbornness on not using the transfer portal at that position has really come back to bite them. Because if you put a good starting center on this team, no matter what his style of play is, this backcourt's good enough to pair with that and win a lot of games. But I will say this, Marist Sissoko in game one against Wisconsin, 2 points, 1 rebound in 13 minutes with 3 fouls. That was his worst game of the year. He's been significantly better than that lately. He's been one of the best rebounders in the country. I do expect him to show up and be a little tougher here, but like I said, it's a really tough spot for the Spartans.
Oh, I think that it is a tough spot as well, and I do think that down low is where they're really going to be hurt. As Greg Waddell, he does tremendous work over at Sleepers Media. He has shown to me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and do have to ask you about this as well, because you're on the betting side much like myself. Something that I've noticed very much this season is that we have been seeing a lot of overstaking gold, and even in the Big Ten, the scoring has been up quite a bit this year. Like we saw it in that Illinois versus Northwestern game where everything exploded. Wisconsin has become one of the more efficient offenses in all of college basketball. I can't believe I'm saying that. Purdue has been a team that has been getting to 80 plus on the regular. Just how have you taken a look at not just the Big Ten, but the overall landscape of college basketball and just the overall increase in scoring and the overall increase in offensive efficiency this season?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think there are a lot of, at least in the Big Ten, there are some programs that are okay playing faster this year than we are used to seeing. Purdue being one of them. I mean, they historically have been a team that really does like to slow things down and pound the post. And this year, Matt Painter, he still does that from time to time, but I think he's relented a little bit and put some more trust in Braden Smith to run the show and utilize his talent and his depth. And I think it's worked. And it's not to say it's just a Purdue thing. Illinois is playing fast. Indiana, Iowa, Penn State are all ranked in the top 100 in tempo this year. So for that conference, that's what I've noticed. I don't think there's necessarily elite offenses, although Wisconsin, Purdue, Illinois all rank in the top 10. But around the country, man, we're seeing some of the experience of the fifth-year guys really show. And to even kind of whittle it down more, I think one of the best examples across the board of what has happened with the transfers in this sport is when we see a guy go from an up transfer situation from the mid-major level to his first year at a high major, maybe asked to be a star point guard or a starter on a good team. I think there's a really big adjustment curve. Stephen Ashworth this year is a really good example. He just doesn't look like the player that he was in the past. If that player comes back for year two, we've seen some stellar leaps from guys. And Jalen Pickett was a great example last year in the Big Ten. This year, I think Jameer Young's a good example. Tyson Walker's a good example as he now steps into year 3 and takes yet another step forward. Mark Sears at Alabama, really good example. And I think there are so many fifth-year and sixth-year guys taking over this sport right now that I think that comfort has something to do with why there are so many good offenses.
I think that you're right on with that, and we have been seeing the transfer portal giveth and taketh away, and it has been interesting to take a look at these guys that they were denied a waiver at the beginning of the season. come back into form as well, because that has been something to really watch out for as well. We're going to be seeing a few of those teams on display on Friday. As I was alluding to, it's a relatively small slate on Friday, but outside that big Wisconsin versus Michigan State game, is there anything else that you're going to be taking a look at? Because it is a day of slim pickings before 100 million billion games on Saturday, but I do think that there are some intriguing spots here, especially the game out there in the A10 involving the Saints and St. Joe's and St. Bonaventure.
Yeah, anytime you get a Saint on Saint matchup, the Catholic schoolboy in me gets excited, Greg. I got to tell you. The only other game that I've got my eye on a little bit on Friday is the game out west, Stanford at California. Stanford baffles me, I'll be honest with you, because this is a team that shoots the lights out. They're shooting 40% on the year from three. I think they've got real offensive talent. I mean, I think they've got a lot of guys, Cannon Carlisle, Jared Bynum, Andres Stojakovic are guys that I really believe in individually as players. And they just kind of are as hot can be, like we saw when they beat Arizona at home, or they're as cold can be in a lot of their losses. And you never know what type of team is going to show up on the road. They're going to Cal, who is not a good basketball team by any means, but will have home court advantage. We saw them beat Colorado a couple weeks ago. They just beat Washington State in overtime last game. You know, I like to think that Stanford can show up and win that game because I think they're the better basketball team. But depending on what number that opens at, that's something I might have to talk myself out of in hopes of saving my funds for Saturday, Greg.
Currently, we're seeing Cal as a 2.5-point favorite. And keep in mind, a big-time revenge matchup for Mark Madsen, someone who used to go to Stanford. You thought that Jared Haas was going to get canned, and how he still has a job at Stanford, I have absolutely no earthly idea whatsoever. There's a lot of things I can explain. That's one that I'm never, ever going to be able to do so with, but I do think that that is going to be one of the more interesting games of the night, and both of these teams have been rough with regards to their defense, to say the least, but something that is never rough, something that is very crisp, very clean, and always gets the job done. That'd be you, Greg. You do amazing work over there at Sleepers Media, Field of 68, along with what you're doing over at Action Network. Let the good people at home know what's on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
I appreciate it, Greg. You can follow me at GWizzy12. You can follow Carter and I at Sleepers Media. As you mentioned, we've been doing previews and recaps for all of the biggest games in college basketball all season long. We're having a blast with that. So you can expect more of that from us as we head into March. It's almost that season, my friend. I can't wait.
Oh, I cannot wait either. I know that Greg is doing an absolutely impeccable job taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins this podcast, he lends such good insights. I know that he is Mr. Big Ten, but does a great job taking a look at all 362 teams and provide that once again today right here on Coast to Coast Soup. So big thanks, Greg, for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. Coming up next, I give you picks and analysis on every single game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some big time. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Greg Waddell. He does absolutely amazing work over at the Field of 68. He and Carter Elliott over at Sleepers Media do amazing work. He is so tied in with the Big Ten, as I know he and Carter went to every single Big Ten venue last year, so he can tell you just how much home court advantage means in this great conference. And every single time he joins this podcast, whether he's talking Big Ten or the national landscape, he always lends impeccable insight. So big thanks to Greg for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. They give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNN_D1. Typically, I'd have to tell you about going with the games in normal Las Vegas rotation first, and then the extra games being at the bottom and everything like that. Well, we don't need to do so. We've only got 8 games. None of these involve games on the extra games board, so very straightforward. It's just pretty much in time order today. So that keeps things clean and easy. Let's get things started with 877, 878 on the betting board. Ohio hits a road face-off against Kent State, and Kent State does find themselves as a favorite of 3 to 3.5 points. So on this game is anywhere between 151 and 151.5. That's on my total at a 147.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. It is an Ohio team that's outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but this is a Kent State team that's starting to throttle down. They were really able to make noise last year with regards to their defense, and I think that they're trying to get back to that. It certainly hasn't been going as well as it did a season ago. Last year with sincere carry, they were so good at being able to generate turnovers. They were a top 40 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. This year, they're well outside the top 100 with that regard, and they have sped themselves up. They're now 90th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but ever since MAC conference play has began, you can tell that they're playing at north of 4 possessions fewer per game than they were at the beginning part of the season. So I do think that that's worth taking note of. You've got an Ohio team that is about 191st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but this is a Kent State team that they do get a little bit sloppy with the ball. The changeover from sincere carry at the point guard spot has hurt this team as Giovanni Santiago has come from off the ball to being the main facilitator. 4.1 assists and now 2.4 turnovers per game. He's been able to slash on that a little bit. You do have Chris Payton down low, who should be able to win that battle. 14 points, right around about 8 rebounds per game, going up against an Ohio team that you really don't have that supreme rebounder for this team. You've got one guy that's able to give you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. That'd be Elmore James with about 5.8 boards per contest, and it's an Ohio team that, while you do have Jalen Hunter along Sharif Mitchell, they both give you 13.4 points per contest and Hunter 4.7 assists per game. Both of these guys are shooting less than 31% from 3. Ohio's very efficient with the ball. They only turn the ball over about 10 times per contest, so this is still a Kent State team that's looking to generate turnovers, so a little bit of something's got to give scenario there, but I do think that Kent State going to be able to win the battle on the glass. It's an Ohio team that is outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate. It is a Kent State team that at home they're a little bit of a better rebounding team than in a road/neutral court environment. You've also got Jalen Sullinger providing about 15 points, shooting 40% from three-point range. This is a Kent State bunch that they're shooting about 37% from distance, and that has been one of the main kryptonites of this Ohio team. Ohio has had a difficult time guarding the arc when they've been away from home, as opponents are shooting north of 36% from three-point range against them. I just don't know if you get quite enough possessions in this game to be able to get it over, because Kent State is throttling down. So I did set my total at a 147.5. I'm diving in on the under, with Ohio not really having supreme rebounding, with them just being a little bit of an up-and-down team that they have been a little bit better with their defense. To their credit, they've now given up fewer than 70 points in each of their last 3 games, going up against a Kent State team that they themselves have been actually doing a relatively solid job on offense. They've been able to get to at least 75 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that this is a little bit of a rough matchup for Ohio going on the road. Set my line at 5.5, willing to lay up to 5 with Kent State, and made my total 147.5, so also taking a look at this total under. 879, 880 on the betting board. It is Siena, and they are going to be playing us to Iona. Iona, a road favorite of 8 points, with your total between 139.5 and 140. Set my line at 9, so I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It's a Siena team that has been able to get a little bit more offensively ever since Sean Duru-Gordon has gotten back in the fold. He was a 2-time transfer that was barred from playing towards the beginning part of the season. Those guys were fighting for those 2-time waivers, and well, he's certainly been making the most of it thus far when he's been out there for Siena in his 8 games. 23 points, 8.5 boards, shooting 35% from 3. But he does turn the ball over 3.5 times per contest for a Siena team that overall this year, they're 16.5 turnovers per game, just unsightly. Bottom 10 team in all of college basketball with ball protection, turnovers on a per possession basis. And then that compounds with the fact that Siena is allowing opponents to shoot 36.8% from 3-point range at home. That's a bottom 75 3-point shooting percentage defense at home. And this is an Iona team that, though they've been having their difficulties on offense, defense has been relatively solid. They are about 220th in the country with regards to their opponent's 3-point shooting percentage as well. But when it comes to this Iona team, they're a top 30 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. A lot of that is thanks to Joel Brown, who comes over from Cal. Not too much of a score. He's giving you about 7 points per contest, and he's not a bad 3-point shooter, but he just chooses to be a little bit more passive. He generates multiple steals per contest. He's done a good job of just giving this offense a little bit of flow. I will say for Iona, it's a little bit of a lackluster shooting team in comparison to what Tobin Anderson typically has. They're shooting just 66% the free throw line, 35.8% from 3. Not too bad, with 8-inch tout being able to give you about 14.5 points per contest. And the guy that has been impressing me, 35% 3-point shooter, Greg Gordon, who's been able to give you 13 points, 6 boards per contest. Problem is, he is only the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 4.2 rebounds per game, though they do have Osborne Shema, the 7-footer, bag the full. But The good news for them is that they're going up against a Siena team that they're really not doing a ton right now. Siena's actually a top 140 team with regards to rebound rate. Out of your top 3 scorers, every one of them is giving you at least 5.5 rebounds per game, and you do have 5 separate guys on the roster that do give you at least 5 rebounds per game. That could provide a little bit of difficulty for this Iona team, though. Michael Ealy, he's just not been really an efficient scorer. He's giving you 14 points per contest, but shooting just 26.5% from 3-point range. Zach Tekken, about 3.5 assists, but 3.3 turnovers per game as well. And with the way that Iona is able to generate turnovers, I think that is going to be massive for them. And it's an Iona team that they have given up 70 points for fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. And for the Siena team, despite the fact that they've had back in the fold Sean Dewar-Gordon, it's not really elevated them offensively. With him back in the fold, they have scored 70 points or fewer against D1 teams, and now 6 out of their last 7 games. They did bust out for 74 points in his first game back against Cornell, but they also gave up 95 in that one as well. Just feels like a misfit Siena team that time and time again, it just is very random. One night they'll get their defense going, but then the offense is not going to show up, and then when the offense shows up, the defense does not. It's just been a myriad of issues for them. I did set my total 139. I do think that Iona is just a really tough matchup for Siena with the way that they generate turnovers, so I'm going to be looking at Iona, willing to lay up to 8.5 with them, set my total 139. So here at the 140, looking at the under to go along with the Gales. 881, 882 on the betting board. Niagara plays us to Marist. Marist finds themselves as an underdog of 2.5 points. Their total on this game are between 134 and 135.5. And with Marist, we set them as 3-point underdogs. 2.5 is a max I'm going to be willing to lay with Niagara, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. It is a Niagara team that has taken a massive step back with regards to their defense, and they're going up against a Marist team that, even though it's been a little bit rough for them in terms of covering spreads recently, it's not because of the defense. Marist is 14th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, what I will say about that is that the defense has slipped slide away a little bit in a road/shoot-to-court environment. They are giving up about 12.5 points more per 100 possessions away from home. They're more of a number 30, number 35 defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a road/shoot-to-court environment. So still solid, but not quite the same when they travel, and now they do have to go up against a Niagara team that has done one thing really well. They have bombed it from 3-point range. This Niagara team, with regards to the 3-point shooting percentage, number 3 in all of college basketball. Strangely, they're shooting 43.4% from 3 away from home and 37.5% at home. So I do think that their home 3-point shooting percentage is a constant. I think that we're going to see some drop-off when it comes to Metro Atlantic play moving forward away from home, but I like what Ahmad Henderson has been able to bring to the table. 14.5 points. He's shooting 39% from 3-point range. As a matter of fact, for guys that are averaging at least 3.7 points per game, every one of the players on Niagara's staff that has made at least 1 3 this year is shooting at least 39% from 3-point range. Luke Bumbalo, who comes in for Ball State, 3.5 assists, 10.5 points, shoots 39% from 3. Really, all those guys have been able to hit at least 1 3, aside from the 7-footer in Harlan Obiana. He gets pretty much exempt from this. 8 points, right around about 8 boards per contest. He's done a solid job down low for the team. Now, it is the Niagara team that's outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and while Niagara shoots it really well from 3, they also at home allow opponents to shoot 42% from 3-point range. The problem is, who on Marist is really going to knock down these threes? It's been a squad that has been all over the place with regards to their offense. You may recall my DK Network write-up on them about a week or two ago. I mean, this is a Marist bunch that they have failed to get past 61 points in 4 of their last 5 games. It's been pretty bad, and this despite the fact that they have given up north of 72 points just twice as far this season. The Marist defense has been there. Max Allen giving you about 12.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. This despite the fact that Marist is like a relatively middle-of-the-road rebound rate team. They should be able to win the battle down low, but you have Isaac Brickner, who's the only guy on the roster that's giving you north of 5 rebounds per game, and he's been dealing with a little bit of injury, so that does hurt this Marist team a little bit, as well as he's one of their main facilitators with 3 assists per contest. That puts a lot more on the plate of Jaden Collins, who's able to give you 9 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, only shoots about 27% from 3-point range. Your main guy from 3-point range has been Jackson Price, who's been able to shoot about 41.5% from distance. He's giving you about 7.5 points per contest, but he himself now dealing with injury as well. So this is a Marist team that is now pretty banged up. They don't do necessarily the world's greatest job on the glass. They really do lock you down from 3-point range. This is a Marist bunch that, in regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, it's 90th in all of college basketball. Though I will say that drops off to 35.5% in a road/shoot-to-court environment. So I do think that Niagara is going to be able to pick apart a Marist team that is dealing with quite a few injuries. I think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog. Niagara is playing faster this year, but still well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. It is a Niagara team that, again, they've been a little bit shaky with their defense, but Marist is just not putting the ball in the basket as well. I did set my total 133. I'm going to be looking at the under, and with Niagara, willing to lay 2.5 points and not a half a point more with them. Now we have my DK Network write-up pick. This is 883, 884 on the betting board. Canisius plays those to Manhattan. Manhattan is an underdog of 8.5 to 9 points. Totals between 141.5 to 142. My write-up here is going to be on the over. I set my total at a 149. Got a pair of teams that have not been tremendous with regards to their defense. Manhattan about 264th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Canisius is clocking in at 200th. Now, Canisius has fallen on tough times with their offense. They have failed to exceed 70 points in regulation, which that excludes overtime, in each of their last 7 games, but still have a team that's 133rd in all of college basketball with a 3-point shooting percentage hovering right around about 35.5% overall. Out of their top 4 scorers, every one of them shoots at least 37.5% from distance, but now you are dealing with an ailment to Siem Itajendal. Hopefully I said that correctly. That is their number 2 scorer, who's been able to give you about 14 points per contest, missed the team's last game, and I've ruled him out for this game, so do want to make that known, but this is a Canisius team that they do a good job of being able to find ways to be able to get second chances. 43rd in the country with regards to offensive rebound rate at home. They're grabbing 34.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, as they've got a double-double machine, and Frank Mitchell has been able to give you 12.5 points, 10.5 boards. He's got a lot of muscle. He's been able to do a tremendous job down low with 8+ rebounds in 4 of the team's last 5 games, going up against a Manhattan team that, let's call it what it is, there's not a lot going right for this team. They are outside the top 280 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They have been getting pretty lambasted on the glass themselves. Manhattan 310th in the country with regards to their rebound rate, and I do think that this is going to be a get-right spot for Canisius. I did also set them as a 13-point favorite. I had to choose between the spread and the total because I do like both in this spot, but you do have Shaquille Bender for Manhattan, who's starting to heat up a little bit for this team. He's been able to chip in their 12-plus points at each of the team's last 4 contests. The turnovers have been unsightly, 3+ turnovers in all 4 of these games, but now he's shooting 35% from 3-point range. It's a Canisius team that has a 3-point shooting percentage defense that I just don't think is sustainable as well, with Canisius 62nd in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, holding opponents to shooting 22.3% from 3-point range at home this season. That just can't continue. I'm sorry, that just is not going to. So I do think that you're going to see a little bit of regression with that regard. It is a Manhattan team that they are only shooting about 30.5% from 3-point range, so I question how much regression we're going to see in this one, but I don't think it's going to be 22.5%. Bad Seydu Traore has also been able to chip in there for Manhattan about 9.5 boards, a block and a half, a steal and a half, 2.5 assists per contest, so you've got some relatively good versatility there, but I do think that this is a Canisius team that's going to be able to bust out against a Manhattan team that's relatively up-tempo. They're right around about 117th with regards to total possessions per game, depending upon how teams play on Thursday. Canisius more around 156th in the country with regards to total possessions per game, and neither of these teams force a lot of turnovers. Canisius 241st in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You've got a Manhattan team that's clocking in 251st with this regard, and for Canisius, Trey Dinkins does a relatively good job as a floor general. A steal, 4 assists, 15 points per contest, shooting 37.5% from 3-point range. I do think the Canisius going to be able to connect quite a bit from 3-point range. I do think that with Manhattan having allowed 70+ points in 13 out of their last 14 games, and Canisius, they themselves have allowed 11 out of their last 13 D1 teams to get to at least 70 points, that both of these teams are going to be able to bust out with their offense. As a matter of fact, for Manhattan, they have given up 76+ points in 4 of their last 5 games, so my DK Network write-up pick is going to be on the over. I also think that a Canisius team has really struggled. They've lost 3 out of their last 4 games. They're going to be able to bust out in this spot as well, so I did set Canisius as a 13-point favorite, going to be willing to lay it, and my DK Network write-up pick, that is going to be on this total over 885, 886 on the betting board. Wisconsin plays those to Michigan State. Michigan State finds themselves as 2 to 2.5 point underdogs. Totals 137 after 138. I did set Wisconsin as a 2.5 point favorite. Not willing to lay anything more than 2, but I'm going to be willing to lay the deuce. This is going to be a little bit of a revenge spot for Michigan State as well. Last time these two teams played, Wisconsin went to the Breslin Center, and they were able to get the job done in a game that was a relative eyesore. 70-57 was the final in that one, as Michigan State went just 6 of 19 from 3-point range. A actually won the turnover battle, but they got pounded on the glass, 36-22, and that is the big issue that you do have with Michigan State. Mehdi Sissoko has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, but this is not a great rebounding team of Michigan State. Well, about 116th in the country with regards to rebound rate, and Wisconsin has really improved with this regard. They are 29th in the country with regards to rebound rate. That last game, Stephen Krull, Tyler Wall were able to combine for 14 rebounds in that one, and that's pretty close to an average. You're more around about 12 rebounds between the two of them, but they've been solid. Now, I will say Stephen Krull is shooting 52% from three-point range. I do think that we're going to see a little bit of regression there, and this is a Wisconsin team that's still very slow. They're still outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, but man, this offense has gotten efficient. They are averaging, in terms of points on a per possession basis, 13.6 points more this season rather than a season ago. 13.6 more points per 100 possessions, and this is a Wisconsin team that is just a little bit of a different animal when they are at home. They're averaging 12.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral environment, 22nd in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, with AJ Storr, who was a 40% three-point shooter last season at St. John's, still only shooting about 31% from distance, though he has been the main man for this team as he's been able to supply the team with 13 plus points per contest. You've got Max Kleesman along with John Blackwell, who are both shooting north of 43.5% from three. They've been able to combine for about 18.5 points per contest, and Wisconsin, name of the game for them, taking care of the ball, only about 10 turnovers per contest, and we know this about Michigan State. They're not going to generate a ton of turnovers. They're a little bit better this year than they have been last year. Ty Walker, AJ Hoggard, a combined 3 steals between the two of them. Walker continues to shoot 40% from three, 3 assists, 19.5 points per game. He has been relatively tremendous, and they need him to be because this is a Michigan State team that, as I mentioned, they have been a little bit rough with regards to the front court, but they've done a nice job of being able to cut off the three-point arc. 39th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that's more around 29.1% at home, north of 34% in a road/neutral environment, and this is a Wisconsin team that's going to give up the arc. They are about 305th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that dives down to about 32% at home in a road/neutral environment. That goes to about 40%, so I do think that that is relatively massive in this ordeal. I do think that Michigan State going to get a lot of clean possessions. This is a Wisconsin team that they're generating a few more turnovers this year than they have in past years. They're about 155th in the country with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, but it's not something that they necessarily look to seek out. Trey Hallman, he's been able to shoot it well from three-point range, but you just need more out of guys like he, Jaden Akins, and company. And I do think that Wisconsin going to be able to win from within. Set Wisconsin as a 2.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Both of these teams play relatively slowly. It was a slog the first time these two teams played, and I expect more of the same here. Set my total 136.5, so here 137.5, 138. Looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2 with Wisconsin, 887, 888 on the betting board. St. Bonaventure plays us to St. Joe's. St. Joe's hopes to not be average Joe's, as they do find themselves as 3 to 3.5 point underdogs. Total on this game between 143.5 and 144, and with St. Joe's, I did set them as a underdog of 2 points. So now that we're getting 3, I'm going to be willing to take the points. This is a St. Joe's team that has been able to do a pretty supreme job with regards to their defense. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this team ranks in the top 45 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, so I will say they are giving up about 16.5 points more per 100 possessions in a road/neutral environment rather than at home, and they go up against the St. Bonaventure team that has some of the most experience of any team in all of college basketball, and they themselves 66th in the country. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, it's a Bonnie's team that has allowed north of 70 points in just 3 games thus far this season. They've been able to do a good job of locking down on defense. I mean, for the Bonnies, it's just really been all about the offense. 60 points or fewer scored in 3 of their last 5 games, though this is one of the oldest teams in all of college basketball. You've got guys like Micah Adams-Woods, Charles Pride, they're in their 5th years in the backcourt. Pride is a do-it-all guy, stealing 12.5 points on 47% three-point shooting, and as a matter of fact, out of your top 3 scorers that have made at least 1 3 for St. Bonaventure, all 3 shoot at least 40% from three-point range. Moses Flowers gives you 10 points on 40% three-point shooting, and then Micah Adams-Woods, 14 points. He's shooting north of 45% from three-point range, so I do think that these guys are going to find it a little bit more offensively. This is a St. Joe's team that they themselves are a little bit top-heavy, but have to love what you're able to get out of the duo of Xavier Brown along with Lynn Greer. They've been able to combine for about 7 assists at 3.5 turnovers per game. Brown shoots 46% from 3 with 11.5 points per contest for both of these guys. And then Eric Reynolds, your main man, shoots 41.5% from 3, 18 points per contest. I really do think what is going to be deciding this game is how both of these teams perform on the glass, and they're relative equal. St. Bonaventure, 96th in the country with regards to rebound rate, but they actually actually have a better rebound rate in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. St. Joe's, they are 114th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, so relative equals there. And you've had Rasheer Fleming be able to give you 8+ rebounds per game over the last 2 months after a slow start to the season. It is a St. Joe's team that, with regards to guarding the three-point arc, they are right there with St. Bonaventure. These two teams are 44th and 49th respectively. With regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, St. Bonaventure guards the arc a little bit worse at home rather than on the road. St. Joe's guards the arc a little bit worse when they're on the road rather than at home. So everything really does iron out in this game. I do think that home court advantage is going to be very, very critical, and both of these teams have been dealing with a few injuries, but I do think that with the St. Joe's team being able to get about 10.5 points, 4 boards out of someone like a Cameron Brown, having that sort of depth, I do think that's going to be just enough for them to hold in there. St. Joe's is the team that's in better form. They've won 3 straight games. They've gone to at least 70 points in each of their last 5 games. Though I do think that the Bonnies, they're going to be able to slow this game down. I do think that this is going to be very nip and tuck, so being able to get 3, I'm going to be looking at the points, set my line at 2, and St. Bonaventure, again, they have been a rock with regards to their defense. Set my total at 136. I'm looking at the under, and I'm willing to take north of 2 here with St. Joe's. 889, 890 on the betting board. It is Utah Valley on the road facing up against Seattle. Seattle's a 6 to a 7.5 point favorite. Your total is between 136.5 and 139. A little bit all over the place, mostly seeing 139 to 139.5. We've seen some line movement, so I'm looking at the under. I set my total 137.5, and I did set the Seattle team as a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. This Seattle team has been able to do a very good job with their defense. It used to be where you had Cam Tyson just throwing in there a bunch of points and everyone else was sort of ancillary pieces, and they become a more complete team this season in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This Seattle bunch clocking in 32nd in all of college basketball, and they get a tremendous boost when they're at home, giving up fewer than 90 points per 100 possessions. This team has really been able to do a good job of being able to hit the glass as well, because while you do still have Cam Tyson as your main go-to scorer, he's been able to give the team north of 17 points per contest, shooting in the high 30s from 3-point range. You've had a lot of other guys be able to come to the forefront. John Christofilis, he comes over from Creighton. He's been able to give you double figures. He's been able to chip in there right around about like 4 or 5 boards per contest. I like what he's been able to bring to the table. And then you've got a Utah Valley team that they just don't shoot it from 3-point range. Utah Valley, a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to 3-point shooting percentage at 25.8%. In a roadside shoot court environment, it's a bottom 5 mark in the country. Drake Allen, who comes over from Southern Utah, is giving you 12.5 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 1.5 steals, but a 16% 3-point shooting percentage. Traven Doris is the center of this team, and he is the only guy on the roster shooting north of 33.3% from 3-point range. I think he's taken through 2 threes this season. 10 points, 7.5 boards, block and half per contest. He does a good job down low, and this is a Utah Valley team that they're not quite on the same level as Seattle, but they're not a bad defense by any stretch of the imagination in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. 123rd, they're allowing about 7 points more per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home, but the arc is just really where they're getting destroyed. Not only do they not shoot a ball from 3-point range, but in a road/neutral court environment, they do allow opponents to shoot 36.5% from 3-point range, even though Caleb Stone-Carrawell has been able to give you about 11.5 points per contest. That's been just a big giant issue for the team in the backcourt, and other than Doris, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, Seattle, they do a great job of having a holes greater than some of its parts rebounding approach. Kobe Williams, Brandon Chatfield both give you 10.2 points per contest. Williamson shoots about 36% from 3. He also gives you a block and a steal per contest. Chatfield gives you a block per contest. You've been able to have a guy in Alex Shoemaker come up for about 5 assists, 3.5 rebounds, 13.5 points per contest. Paris Dawson has been able to give you some nice ancillary production whenever Cade Tyson needs a little bit of a blow as well. So I do like the way that Seattle has really been able to remake themselves, and they've just got a little bit more depth this season. They're about 90th in the country with regards to rebound rate. This is a Utah Valley team that's clocking in 247th. I think that Seattle gets the job done at home in a game that I think is going to be relatively low scoring. So I might total 137.5, seeing 139.5. Looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Seattle. We wrap things up with 891, 892 on the betting board. Cal is going to be playing us to Stanford. Stanford is an underdog of 2 to 2.5 points. Total on this game, it is between 152.5 to 153. I did set my number at 2.5, mostly seeing 2.5s out there. So if we're able to get that 2 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. 3 is going to be my buy point on Stanford. Stanford has been able to do a pretty supreme job of being able to hit threes, and this is a Cal team that has been rough with regards to their defense, to say the least. Cal is outside the top 180 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and one of the big things for this Cal team is that they have been getting lambasted from 3-point range. This is a Cal bunch that is allowing opponents from 3-point range to shoot 36.2%. That is 312th in all of college basketball, and it is a Stanford team that has been dealing with the injury to Jared Bynum that had to be taken into account. He was given the team north of 6 assists per contest, does a good job of doling it out, and this is a Stanford team that they themselves have been giving up the arc 269th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. That balloons to 37.4% in a road/shoot record environment, though I do like what Cannon Carlisle has been able to do. I don't know why he was missing towards the beginning part of the season. He's a freshman. I don't know if they were trying to redshirt him. I don't know if it was an injury, but ever since he's come into the fold, he has been able to give the Stanford team a whole bunch of production as he's been able to supply the team with 15.5 points, 3 assists, shooting 44.5% from three-point range. I have to wonder if that's a little bit of fool's gold, but with him in there, this is a Stanford team that out of their top 5 scorers, when they're all fully healthy, 4 of them do shoot at least 44% from three-point range. This is a team that they turn the ball over 13 times per contest. They don't generate a lot of steals themselves, and I do think that they're going to have a tough time on the glass. Maximine Raynaud has been able to give you about 9 or so rebounds per game, but this is a Cal team that has Fardaws Amick being able to generate a double-double, 15.5 points, 10.5 boards, shooting about 34.5% from three-point range, and then Jaden Tyson, he has been incredible, shooting 37% from three, 6'6" combo player that's able to give you about 21 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, steal and a half per contest, just a do-it-all sort of player. It is a Cal team that was expecting a little bit more in the guard rotation as they've been dealing with the injuries to Devin Askew all season long, and Jalen Celestine has been in and out of the fold, but Celestine has been able to come to the forefront a little bit more. He's been utilized a little bit more of an ancillary piece, but with this Cal team, with having Tyson along with Amick down low, they should be able to win that battle down low. They're about 121st in the country with regards to rebound rate. Stanford, they're clocking in well outside the top 125 with this regard. This is a Stanford team that's 181st with regards to their rebound rate, and it's just a Stanford team that, in general, they have not been able to travel very well with regards to their defense. Now, I was alluding to it. This is a Cal team that, with regards to their defense, home and road, it's been relatively brutal, but in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis for the Stanford team, they're clocking in 177th. So I do think that Cal is going to be able to knock down enough shots. Keep in mind, Mark Madsen, he is a graduate of Stanford. You thought that they were going to can Jared Haas. They never did so. I'm sure that he's a little bit salty, and I think that his guys are going to fight for him in this spot. I did set my total 152.5. Seeing some 152s out there. Going to be looking at the over, and with Cal willing to lay up to a deuce with them, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Greg Waddell of Sleepers Media for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Jaden_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and other ways find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season, and that means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.